Welcome to the What Really Happened radio show. Putting America first, second, and third. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show. It's Friday, August 30th, 2013, and if I sound like I'm coming over a lousy phone connection, I am. We have had a power blackout here on the island of Oahu. I don't know how widespread it is yet, but it took us down while I was preparing for my show, and so we're basically going to be doing at least part of the show over the cell phone. Maybe the power will come back. It depends. ECO's notoriously slow about repairs, but we'll try and get the show back on as soon as possible, and if not, when the cell phone battery runs out, we'll be reprising last Wednesday's show, talking about the very obvious rush to war and the propaganda that's going with it. I can't take phone calls over this cell phone link. So basically, Kerry just finished his presentation at the White House. It was significant in that they did not announce any action against Syria. And so what Kerry's presentation was, and it was all very emotional and all, they're trying to push all the emotional buttons. It's basically one more attempt to sell this idea of the Syrian war to the American people and the Congress. A lot of what Kerry said was outright fabrication. He was saying that they absolutely knew that the attack came from areas under the control of the Syrian forces. That's a complete lie because the map that was published by the New York Times clearly showed the attack originated in rebel-held territory. And don't forget, in addition to all those women and children who were hit with this chemical attack, some of Syria's soldiers were also contaminated by the attack, but none of the rebels. So it doesn't make sense that Assad would have done this. The idea never flew. Kerry's out there insisting, hey, this is not another situation like Iraq. You can trust us this time. And sounding more and more like a used car salesman and less like a Secretary of State. And speaking of Secretary of State, listening to Kerry's speech, I was reminded of the observation made by Secretary of State Cordell Hull when he was presented Japan's declaration of war 1 hour after the attack on Pearl Harbor. And he looked at it and he said words to the effect of, I did not think it possible for a nation to engage in such lies until I had seen them presented here. And I'm paraphrasing loosely because I don't have the direct quote in front of me, but that's exactly my reaction. The White House is clearly raising on a busted flush. Germany's not going along with an attack on Syria. Turkey is opposed to it. Poland is opposed to it. Italy is saying they can't use their airfields. Jordan is saying they can't use their territory. David Cameron got smacked down by Parliament, and so Britain is not taking part of it. France is sending one ship, but Holland is facing growing opposition to this war within his own country, and so he might not last. Basically, Obama is out there saying, I'm willing to go alone, and he very much is alone on this. Nobody is backing this up. Nobody is believing this story. And Kerry's speech just now, they're just trying one more time to convince Americans. They can't seem to understand and believe that they're no longer able to manipulate the American people into another war. And I think there's a lot of denial going on. Will there be an attack? It's entirely possible. Barack Obama wants to walk into the G20 and say, look, this is what's going to happen to any country that drops the U.S. dollar. And so the speculation is that the attack will begin tomorrow, Saturday, and end just before the G20 convenes, so that Obama has an object lesson to wave at the G20, because we know a big part of their agenda is discussing dropping the U.S. dollar as the international trade and reserve currency and replacing it with something else. So this is a desperation gamble to get a war going, to have a lot of bloody bodies to wave around and say, look, if you drop the dollar, this is going to happen to you. We can convince the American people that we can go to war against any country that dares refuse to play ball with the U.S. bankers. And again, even though I'm kind of cut off from the world, I was able to update the What Really Happened website. I really need all of our listeners and readers to just keep up the pressure. We know there are a lot of protests around the world. They're still going forward with the protest in London tomorrow, even though Parliament voted this down, because the British people understand Cameron is still looking for some way he can move forward and support war in Syria even without the permission of the Parliament. And it's a full court press on both sides. So we're not out of the woods yet. But it is a very significant time in history, because I remember over the last 20 years, one of the things I'm always having to hear from people is they'll read my website and they'll listen to the broadcast and they'll say, yeah, we know the wars are wrong. We know government is lying. We know the bankers are corrupt, but there's nothing we can do. And looking at what happened over the last few days in Great Britain and all these other countries just falling away from the war agenda, we did that. We, you and I, and Republic Broadcasting and the independent media and the people of planet Earth did change things. So whenever anybody comes up to you and says, yeah, I know you're right and all these things are going wrong, but there's nothing that we can do, you point to this moment in history when we stood up and effected a change. And like I said, we're still not out of the woods. Obama's probably going to go ahead with some kind of a cruise missile attack. Israel could start shooting at the Russian and American ships trying to kick something off. The people who want the war, by definition, they're willing to kill millions of people to achieve their aims, whether it's overt, covert, we don't know. But I did find it very significant that John Kerry absolutely felt he had to address the linkage between Syria and Iraq, and he's trying to say, oh, it was a completely different situation. No, it isn't. Everything they have done up to this point tells us this is a replay of the Iraq scenario. Weapons of mass destruction. We must go in and invade. And the absurdity of this thing is, even if Assad did carry out this attack, and it doesn't make any sense that he did, even if he carried it out, is the U.S. government really willing to risk war with Russia and China over what happened in Syria? That doesn't seem like a real enough cause. So we know the issues behind the war go back to the U.S. dollar and the Federal Reserve and the petrodollar. It's a desperate gamble to keep U.S. control of the global economy, and it's failing miserably. So moving right along from that, again, countries are just falling away from this. Back in Vietnam, we had this slogan we used to say, suppose they threw a war and nobody came, and it was actually made into a movie somewhat after. We're there. They tried to throw a war and nobody is coming to this. And Obama's attack against Syria is going to be carried out primarily with these robotic automated systems. They're already saying no boots on the ground because they're not going to be able to find people willing to march into Syria. So we are in a fight for the future course of America's foreign policy. And we need to send a message to the United States government. They are not in control. They're not supposed to be in control. We, the people, are in control. They're supposed to do what we tell them to do and what we are telling them over and over again. No more wars for the bankers. All righty, I don't actually have a show clock here, but I assume we're coming up on a break here. Dan, are you there? Got about a minute to go here. Yeah, I don't have a new show clock on the wall, so again, we're just improvising because I'm on the cell phone here. But we're going to be coming back in a minute and talking about just the utter improbability of this and how important it is for you to get out there to those protests. This isn't over. Those people who want war are desperate. They will try anything to move this thing forward. I'm very concerned about false flag attacks. We even had a little funny contest going on my website. How will Obama get his war? And I posted some of the entries there, and some of them are actually pretty funny. So that might be worth going over to what really happened. I know the graphic I illustrated it with has already gone viral. Feel free to help yourself to any of my original graphics and send them to your friends to get the message out. Yes, this is Iraq all over again. They are lying to us to get us into another war. They're desperate to escalate into Iran, and they are risking war with Russia and China, all for pieces of paper with ink on it. And this is as serious and as real as it gets. Future history books are going to be writing about these few weeks and what we, the American people, do. And that's how important it is. And I know it's the Labor Day weekend. You probably have holiday plans, but please make an effort to get out there, at least on the social media, and just keep pushing on the idea. We, the American people, know this is just more lies, and we will not go along with it. Got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And this is probably going to be the last segment I do over the cell phone. We still don't have our electricity back, but batteries are failing, and we're going to, unless the power comes back in the next 10 minutes, we're going to have to basically finish our show with a rebroadcast of Wednesday. There is another breaking story you need to be paying attention to, and it is linked to the front page of whatreallyhappened.com. Apparently, an Associated Press reporter who also runs his own website called Mint Press got into the area of the chemical attack inside Syria and interviewing people there. The victims of the attack itself told him it was the rebels. Apparently, some rebels are saying, yes, the attack was carried out by other rebels. It might have even been an accident. They were getting these chemical weapons in from Saudi Arabia, and something accidentally launched or went bang. But again, this whole Russian war in Syria is based on the absurd, insane idea that Syria's President Assad would invite chemical weapons inspectors into Syria, and on the day they arrive, unleash a chemical weapons attack, not against the leadership of hired mercenaries trying to oust him, but against women and children and his own soldiers right in front of where those inspectors were staying. It simply is not credible. Now, Kerry is out there saying they've got all this new evidence, that most of it's classified, just take our word, that we have the information that we can't share with you. That's nonsense. This government has no credibility. If the U.S. government told me it was going to be a sunny day, I'd feel obliged to take an umbrella. And notice how they got all this new evidence one day after this delegation from Israel came to the United States, met with Samantha Power, had a meeting at the White House, and 24 hours later Kerry says, oh, yes, we've absolutely got the proof. Like anything from Israel is going to be proof of anything, Israel lives by deception. They bombed the King David Hotel with Israelis dressed like Arabs. There was the Levant affair where they bombed British and American assets in Egypt and planted evidence to frame Egyptian Muslims. They got caught at that because the bomb went off early, and the Egyptians caught one of the bombers and blew the lid off the whole case. USS Liberty, while Israel was trying to sink that U.S. ship and murder all U.S. sailors, Israel was screaming to Washington, D.C., oh, it's Egypt. Egypt's attacking your ship. Go make war on them. And, of course, we know that on 9/11, the only people actually arrested on 9/11 near the World Trade Towers were the dancing Israelis, some of whom were later revealed to be Mossad agents, and they're cheering and high-fiving and dancing and celebrating as those towers came crashing down. Now, the Israeli media, which apparently doesn't understand that the rest of the world is actually looking at what they're saying. For the last few days, they've been saying, oh, Israel intelligence forms the core of the case against Syria. Israel is the one who had that phone call saying, that intercepted the phone call that said Assad did it. And today they published polls inside Israel. And the poll results inside Israel is Israelis are highly in favor of America invading Syria, but not in favor of their own troops getting involved. In other words, the attitude of the Israeli people is, yes, we want America to go to war against our enemies. We want to keep our kids at home. And that tells you all you need to know about Israel's policy, about how throughout the decades they lie, cheat, steal to get other countries to do their dirty work for them. This thing is just set up from beginning to end. Actually was trading emails with a news person over at CBS, and he kept saying, isn't it possible Assad could do this? I kept saying, no, it's not possible. It's simply not quite like, no, Assad really is that stupid. No, he's not. Assad may be a self-absorbed, sociopathic megalomaniac, like all world leaders, especially our own, but nobody gets to be that high in office with, being dumb. And the same thing is true with Obama. His job is there to sell you a war to prop up the American banking system, and he's failing miserably. John Kerry's speech this morning was their last desperate gasp to sell you this lemon. John Kerry was really out there on that used war lot saying, look, this is a low-mileage war. It's not going to cost you much to operate. It's great mileage here. Was driven by a little old lady from Pasadena who never dared listen to rock and roll on the radio. That's what he was doing. It was a sales pitch. And I do think it's significant that they did not commit to a course of action during Kerry's presentation. I think they're going to be looking at the overnight poll numbers tonight before they make a decision. And that is why it is so important for everybody listening to this program to get out there and make as much noise as you can, because we really do have a chance. We the people of the United States, we the people of planet Earth, we have a real chance to change history right now. We are no longer a planet of humans ruled by despots who send us off to fight their wars for profit. The people of the Earth itself have woken up, and they're taking the course of their future into their own hands. Zbigniew Brzezinski calls it the Great Global Political Awakening, and it's happening right now. And all of us need to stand up and tell the government, you do not have our consent to involve us in another war, especially a war to prop up the Federal Reserve note, which we know it's really all about. And the Secretary of State John Kerry, yes, this is Iraq all over again. Everything you've done up to this point, including today's speech, shows us it's just Iraq again. Because the U.S. government had all these reports that claimed Saddam had nuclear weapons, and we were told they're just as trustworthy. How can you not trust the government? Well, we, the people, don't trust the government for very good reason, because the government time and time again proves it is not deserving of that trust. They're lying us into another war, and I need your help to stop it. And that means make noise. And again, I understand it's a holiday weekend. You're looking forward to a rest, hanging out with family. But if there is a protest near where you are, please make time tomorrow to join it. Be visible, be noisy. If there isn't a protest, get together with some friends. Just spend an hour down on a street corner. Say, no more wars for the bankers. No war in Syria. Dear President Obama, you are fired. Turn in your keys and clean out your office. Whatever it takes to get the message across to the United States government and to the rest of the world that we, the American people, aren't part of this insanity. We will not share the responsibility. We will not share the blame. They are doing this without our permission and blessing. The polls all over the place let single digits support this war. And those single digits are explained by people who profit from war, the defense contractors, people who are in the military who see war as an opportunity for promotion and advancement. And you cannot fight a war with less than 10% popular support. It doesn't work. You certainly can't win a war with less than 10% support of the population. So it is really, really important, and I wish I could stay for the rest of the day on the broadcast, but unfortunately the crumbling infrastructure of the United States of America, which has been allowed to rot so that they can throw more money at Wall Street and Israel and the war machine, has definitely worked against us today. So after this next commercial break, we're going to be reprising, I think, the show from Wednesday. But please take time to go over to the What Really Happened website and just look at that collection of articles. All these articles coming out about how the people on the ground in Syria said it was the rebels who carried out the chemical attack. Some of the rebels are now saying it was carried out by the rebels. They're saying it may have actually been a horrible accident. There's a lot of information flying back and forth. But the bottom line you need to remember is the official story that Assad was dumb enough to invite in UN chemical weapons inspectors, and on the day they arrive, carry out a chemical attack that is simply beyond belief. And nobody but a war hawk or somebody whose brain is melted on SSRIs could even begin to believe such nonsense. It absolutely is USDA choice top bovine excrement. There's the music. I'm going to get out of here and leave you with a replay. I apologize for not having the real show today. And Claire was supposed to be back in our third hour, but she will be here a week from today. So aloha, America. Take care. Get angry. Stop this war.